Today we're talking about the immune system. This can be the title if you are writing notes in your notebook. All right, so the first thing we need to write down is that the immune system helps fight off disease. You know this from already talking about white blood cells, fighting off foreign invaders, things like viruses, fungi, bacteria that are not supposed to be in our body. The immune system actually encompasses a whole bunch of different things. Lymph nodes, the thymus gland, the spleen, bone marrow. We haven't really talked a ton about all of these, but then also these cells that we're going to be talking about. Some of these are the white blood cells. Back when we learned about white blood cells, I had mentioned that there were more than one type of white blood cell. We're going to learn about some of those today. First thing we have to talk about is what kind of defenses do we have to prevent things from getting into our body? And the first one is non-specific, meaning they don't target specific viruses or specific bacteria. They prevent all harmful things from getting into our body. A couple of these things that help protect us from everything are our skin. So our skin makes up a layer. Mucus, the thick stuff that is lining, for example, like your nose, you've got mucus in your nose and your throat, and all of those things help to trap bacteria and viruses. We have sweat. Sweat helps wick away some of those foreign invaders. Saliva. There are actually enzymes in saliva that can actually break down some bacteria and stuff before you swallow so that it doesn't get into your stomach. And then tears. If you get a piece of dust or something in your eye, you'll automatically start tearing up to try to get rid of it. All of these are ways that our body tries to protect us from getting foreign things inside. So first thing we're going to look at is one of these other types of specific defenses or non-specific defenses, which is a specific type of cell called a macrophage. Take a look at these cells. These are our little bacteria. Notice how they're just surrounding them and eating them, and then they're disappearing. These are called macrophages. And so what they do is they're these big types of cells that go in and kind of eat up the bacteria and destroy it. Okay, so they use a process. You see it here. It's called phagocytosis. You might hear of them as being endocytosis is another way that we can say that they help eat these foreign invaders. So macrophages, what the heck are they? They're white blood cells. They eat viruses and bacteria. You can see a picture here. We've got some viruses. They go around, they surround it, they engulf it, and then they break it down. So there's a cell part called a lysosome that has some enzymes and chemicals that help break down the viruses, and then they get rid of the waste. All right, the last thing we have is the inflammatory response. And this is our body temperature can increase to try to get rid of bacteria and viruses because bacteria and viruses don't replicate or copy themselves very well at high temperatures. So when you get a fever, that's actually your body responding to try to get rid of whatever might be trying to get you sick. So again, we call these non-specific because they're not targeted towards a specific type of virus. Like we don't just do these for the COVID virus or for HIV or for any other virus, the virus that causes flu, influenza. We do this for any virus or bacteria that gets into or is trying to get into our body. We also, here's an example of a graph, right? So the injured cells or the sick cells release a chemical and it triggers our temperature to increase. We also have specific defenses, and this means we have specific cells that work against specific viruses or fungi or bacteria. Now, even if our body hasn't seen a virus before, like let's say COVID, before COVID-19, nobody's body had seen COVID before. We can make these cells so that they target specific viruses like COVID. So in your body, anytime you've seen, if you've had the flu or you've been exposed to the flu, you're going to have specific cells that can target the flu that are made. So these are cells that are created after you've been infected, and they work on fighting specific pathogens. Pathogen is a disease-causing organism. So anything that could cause disease, this could be a parasite, like a worm, a protozoa, fungi, prokaryotes, another word for bacteria, virus. It's just showing the different things that can infect our body. So let's talk about how all of. All right, so we're going to look at this animation here, just in the beginning of this animation, and we're going to talk about what's happening. So let's go ahead and watch. So here we have a macrophage. Here's our pathogen. This is like our virus or bacteria that's in the body. So remember we said macrophages are going to engulf this, okay? This something bad, this pathogen, okay? And what they do is they take the proteins or part of that virus or bacteria called an antigen, and they stick it on the outside of their cell. All right, so they stick it on the outside and they say, hey, here's this part of this virus. Now, what happens next? We've got a helper cell that comes in and recognizes and said, hey, I'm going to bind to this. I'm going to recognize, oh, we've got a virus here, and I'm going to go connect to this. And then the T helper cell says, hey, now I know what this protein for this virus is, and now I can go look for it. Okay, you'll see they're releasing some chemicals in there. Don't worry too much about that. So now that we know, now that this cell, this T cell, and I know they have slightly different names, but now that the T cell knows what antigen or what protein to look for, it's going to go out and it's going to find all of those proteins. And this is especially important because some of the cells have been infected with a virus, and when they're infected with that virus, they're going to have that protein on the outside. Okay, so this T cell, he's going to help go and kill all the other cells. We also have another cell here, okay? And this is a B cell. So what we're looking at here is a normal cell. It's being infected with this virus. When it gets infected, it's also going to have some of this the virus's antigens there. And so this is where our T cell, our killer T cell, is going to come in, because the T cell is going to say, hey, I know you have been infected with this virus because you match with the virus that I know, and it's going to kill all the cells that have been infected with that virus. Now, there's only one last thing. Now we're killing all the cells that have been infected with the virus, so we can end up killing the virus and getting it out of our system. But the last part is we need to remember, we need to be able to remember that we've seen this virus, so that if it tries to infect us again, we can mount an army and prevent it from infecting. So that's where these B cells come in. Here's what B cells do. B cells recognize, they're like, hey, we're gonna make a whole bunch of cells here, and what they're going to do is make antibodies. Antibodies are these Y-shaped things. They're going to make the antibodies, and the antibodies are going to be the memory. They're going to stick in your body so that the next time a virus comes in, they're going to say, hey, I recognize this. We don't have to go through all those other steps, before, because these antibodies now are going to attach to the virus cells and they're going to prevent them from infecting cells. So we can see these little antibodies, they're going to attach to the virus. Our macrophage can destroy them, but they're not going to be able to infect anything. So that was a lot of info. Let's write down some steps. We already have specific defenses here. So the first step, macrophages eat the virus. Remember, those are the big cells. They're going to eat the virus, and they're going to display the virus parts on the outside. After they do this, okay, the T cell is going to come along and say, hey, I'm going to match with this virus part. And now I know what these viral parts look like, so I'm going to go around and I can kill all of the cells that have this part as well. So T cells then are going to kill the infected cells. All right, then we have to remember we've got B cells. Our B cells are going to make antibodies. And these are the memory pieces. The antibodies are the memory pieces. They're going to stay in your bloodstream and they're going to remember so that next time you get infected, you don't have to go through all these other steps again because we have antibodies that can attach to the cells and make sure that they don't infect any of our regular normal cells. They're going to attach to the virus. So the antibodies attach to viruses and viruses cannot infect the cells anymore. So this is the order that all of this stuff happens. And this is all to protect your immune system. So these, as a reminder, these are specific defenses because they match, right? We have to match a T cell with the virus parts or the bacteria parts. And so we're going to have different B cells and T cells for every virus that comes into our body, just like we're going to have different antibodies. You can have antibodies to COVID, but maybe not have antibodies to HIV.